Okay. This is my first video I've ever done talking in my videos. So if the audio is pretty bad or anything you hear in the background or it's glitchy, I apologize ahead of time. I haven't done anything on audio with my channel, so I really apologize if anything's bad. With that being said, I'm gonna move on to the topic. Texas and Oklahoma. I'm assuming most of you have heard, and if you haven't, I'm going to talk about it and give you a little overview. Texas and Oklahoma. Both teams have reached out to the SEC, the Southeastern Conference, in interest of joining the conference. This is interesting because the theory of a super conference has floated around college football for some time now, and it's been a theory up until this point. It's been like a future theory. Like didn't think it would happen, but this is the possibility. If Oklahoma and Texas joined the SEC, that would create college football's first super conference, meaning that Oklahoma, Texas, Georgia, Florida, LSU, Alabama, they would all be in the same conference. Those powerhouses would all be in the same conference. The SEC already has the argument that they're the toughest conference in college football. This would put a stamp on it and make it undeniable. You could not argue that the SEC would be the most powerful conference. And most likely, depending on how these two teams play and how they fare in the future, the SEC could get two teams in the college football playoff almost every single year, depending on how they play, or depending on how Oklahoma and Texas' schedule fell. Now, this is interesting because if the SEC did choose to accept this, then it would be an idea if the SEC would choose to trade teams, like how Texas A&M and M and Missouri left the Big 12 to join the SEC. I would wonder if they would trade them back or trade some teams like Vanderbilt, Missouri, Mississippi State, Ole Miss to the Big 12. It depends. And to see if the conference alignments would change, like Alabama and Auburn going to the West and pushing the East farther to the West. I mean the West to farther to Texas. Texas A&M, if you haven't heard, is obviously not for this because I mean Texas A&M left to get away from Texas. I mean I don't know, but they don't want Texas. As far as I'm concerned, they don't want Texas in the SEC. The people from Texas A&M have already said that they would not allow it or they would stop Texas and Oklahoma from joining. As far as I'm concerned, they don't want Texas there. I don't know how I am on this. I mean, it would be interesting for college football. It would bring a lot more attention. The SEC would make a lot more money. I mean, if the SEC did say yes, that would be why I think they would say yes, is because of money, obviously. I mean, the SEC would make like double, triple, quadruple the amount of money they make now, adding two powerhouses and historic programs such as Oklahoma and Texas to their resume, mixing it in with Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, Florida, LSU, all those teams. It would be interesting, and like TV contracts and licensing contracts would be a big deal as well. Probably if the SEC did do this, it'd be because of money or fame, which I mean they already have fame, so it's probably money they would be after. But Texas and Texas A&M could become a rivalry again. That's one plus side on this. Texas and Texas A&M hasn't been a rivalry in a while. They discontinued the rivalry, and if Texas does join the SEC, it would be a possibility that Texas A&M and Texas would their rivalry would reform and see if Texas and Texas A&M could be competitive again. Again, like they were competitive before. Not really. Oklahoma and Alabama. Couple of yearly matchups, that would be great to see. I mean, then if Alabama went undefeated, you could not like argue with Alabama's resume. If they had to beat Auburn, Oklahoma, LSU, maybe Georgia, and if Texas is on there, if they beat those that in the same year, you could not argue with Alabama's resume. Same goes with Auburn. If they beat them, LSU, if they beat them, Georgia, Florida, if they beat all those teams, and they you could not argue if they were undefeated to put them in the playoff. Um, so I do think this is a pretty interesting topic. I mean, we would have to see how well it goes on afterwards. Texas and Oklahoma, if they do join, I mean their rivalry, the Red River rivalry would still be intact, hopefully. I mean, depending on how the conference alignments will go, they'd probably still be the same. But Texas and Oklahoma might not have the same reign over the SEC as they do in the Big 12. I mean, Oklahoma to the Big 12 is the same thing as Alabama is to the SEC. They're the rulers of the conference. Oklahoma and Texas, more specifically Oklahoma, might not have the same reign they do over the conference because, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Florida, Auburn occasionally, all have these reigns over the conference. They're all competitive no matter what. So Oklahoma would have to compete with the likes of them and Texas if they were to join the SEC and win the conference. That would add a lot more competition and it would just be a lot more interesting. That's all I'm gonna say for this video. Um, this is my first video I've ever done with audio or me talking. Again, I apologize if the audio is corrupt or it doesn't sound right or it's muffled or anything. I don't have very good equipment here, so I'm sorry. But yeah, that's my opinion. Uh, no one asked for it, but I decided I put it out there. And I'll see y'all in the next video.